Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Monday, the start of a new week, the start of a very, very big week, a huge week in fact. It's tough to really describe how big this week is when it comes to Arsenal, the season, the title and everything that comes with that. Arsenal versus Manchester City, Wednesday night at the Emirates, 7:30. The first meeting this season between the two sides in the league. First versus second. Arsenal win, they go 6 points clear with a game in hand. Manchester City win, they go top of the table, albeit having played a game more than Arsenal. It's a huge game. Honestly, I think this might be the biggest game the Emirates has ever seen. I was thinking of this last night, trying to work out, has there been a bigger game? Possibly the Champions League semi-final against Manchester United. I don't really want to talk about that too much because we all know how that turned out in one of the biggest anticlimaxes you've ever seen in a football match in terms of Arsenal's point of view. But other than that game, in terms of what this means and the connotations and everything like that, I honestly think this is the biggest game the Emirates has ever seen. It is going to be huge. The atmosphere, you'd imagine, is going to be absolutely rocking. Just a massive, massive game. Arsenal going into it with a sense of injustice, a massive sense of injustice, I imagine, after what happened at the weekend. I'll talk about that a little bit more. I got the big rant off my chest yesterday, which I'm sure you've probably seen by now. If you haven't, then I did have my say on it in yesterday's video. There's been a bit more fallout over the last 24 hours or so, which we'll discuss a little bit in this video, but I don't want to go too much over it because it has kind of gone now, and it's a case of as frustrating as it was, as cheated as you kind of feel about what happened. It has gone, and the focus has to be on Manchester City now. And so I'm going to start this video looking ahead to that Manchester City game. Just who starts in this game? Who does Mikel Arteta play? What do you do? I said the other day that I felt like he missed a trick against Brentford. It was a game I thought he should have made a couple of changes in because some players were looking a bit tired. Trossard had been impressive off the bench. He just felt like, yeah, give Martinelli a rest on this one. Play Trossard. He didn't. He stuck with the same 11 that he's played in every single game since the return from the World Cup. And again, it was an underwhelming performance from a few players, especially Martinelli, who really, really struggled. He just looks like he needed a little bit of a break at the moment. And Mikel's now got a really difficult decision to make, because I think if he'd have rested him against Brentford and played Trossard, I think Martinelli would have definitely come back in for Wednesday night. But now he played him, he didn't play well, Trossard came on, he scored, and it's like, what do you do? Do you give Trossard his first start against Manchester City now? It's quite a big dilemma for Mikel Arteta that he's kind of put himself in this position. And it's going to be intriguing what he does. If you're picking on form, you really have to say that Trossard is probably the way to go in this one, because, I mean, he came off the bench, he scored his first goal, he's looked bright every single time he's come off the bench for Arsenal. Martinelli hasn't scored this year. And he's just clearly really struggling. But then I also think that Martinelli could cause Manchester City plenty of problems because of the way Manchester City play, because of the space that gets left down the wings. And we saw Martinelli rip City to shreds at times in the last couple of games at the Emirates when he's played against them. So it's going to be really interesting to see what he does there. Mikel's got some big decisions to make, and that is the biggest one. I'm not sure there'll be many changes elsewhere. Again, before the Brentford game, I thought maybe Tomiyasu could come in for Ben White because of the form Ben White has been in recently. I thought Ben White was better against Brentford, and I can't imagine that Tomiyasu is going to come in. So I think really you're only, unless there's an injury that we don't know about, of course, I think you're only really looking at one potential change for this Manchester City game, and that would be the Martinelli-Trossard one. That's the one that immediately springs out because of Martinelli's form and because of Trossard's form. And it's a big one to make, because Trossard, we all know what you're going to get with Trossard. He's going to be the player who comes inside more and, you know, sort of looks to do what we know he likes to do and cut inside, get into those more central areas. You know, his favourite position is more of a number 10 than a winger, and so that's where he's going to drift into. Martinelli, on the other hand, is going to hug the touchline like he does and look to stretch play as much as possible. And against Manchester City, I do wonder if that's the better option than a player who's going to come inside to the middle, where it's going to be pretty congested anyway, because we know the way that City like to play, we know the way that Arsenal like to play, and it just feels like there might be a lot of players in and around that central area there when you're thinking about Thomas Partey, Odegaard, Xhaka, Rodri, and all the players at Manchester City are going to pack into that midfield. And you just wonder if Martinelli out there really hugging the touchline in the space that's going to be exploited potentially by Kyle Walker bombing forward to help with Manchester City attacks. Is Martinelli the better option there, even if he's out of form? And I think these are all things that Mikel's going to have to consider. And you've also got the fact that Aston Villa is Saturday kickoff 12:30, which, you know, you've got barely any time to rest and recover for. So it's going to be that is going to have to play into his mind a little bit, you would think. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Mikel does when it comes to the starting 11 for that game against Manchester City. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you think should be starting in that game? If there are any changes, who should it be? Would you stick with Martinelli, or do you think Trossard deserves his chance from the start? Okay, we'll have to talk about a little bit now about the fallout about what happened at the weekend with the just frankly unbelievable events in the VAR studio on Saturday, which somehow allowed Brentford's equaliser to stand because, well, frankly, Lee Mason didn't do his job properly. The one job he's in there to do, he didn't do it. And Brentford scored a goal, which they shouldn't have been awarded, and Arsenal dropped 2 points, which they shouldn't have dropped. Yes, they didn't play very well. Yes, Brentford fully deserved their point, but the fact is Arsenal were winning 1-0 with 15 minutes to go. They've managed to get themselves in front, and Brentford were gifted an equaliser that they shouldn't have been given. So you can say that they didn't deserve it, Arsenal didn't deserve it, but these are the sort of games, if you're going to win a title, that are huge in the season. There's games where you don't deserve to win, but you somehow find a way to win. You win it 1-0, you forget all about it, and you just get 3 points. And that's what Arsenal were going to do on Saturday until Lee Mason just completely didn't do his job. And frankly, it's a disgrace. I still can't get my head around it. But PGMOL have released a statement that you probably would have saw yesterday. If you didn't, this is what it says. PGMOL can confirm its chief referee and officer, Howard Webb, has contacted both Arsenal and Brighton to acknowledge and explain the significant errors in the VAR process in their respective Premier League fixtures on Saturday. Both incidents, which were due to human error and related to the analysis of offside situations, are being thoroughly reviewed by PGMOL. Brilliant. I mean, fantastic. That's going to do a lot of good now after the events. Human error. I mean, you can barely even put it down to human error, what happened at Arsenal. You kind of can with the Brighton one because they drew the lines on the wrong player, which, again, is frankly just unbelievably bad thing to do. But at least it's just kind of your eyes, and it's just the error of seeing which body part and which player it was. But I mean, the Arsenal, he just didn't actually do his job. It wasn't a case of human error. He just didn't do his job. He didn't do what he was there to do, which was to check if the goal was offside or not, which is just unbelievable. But I'm not going to go back into that. I had my rant yesterday. If you haven't seen it, you can have a little bit of a watch. But I can't imagine this is going to make Arsenal feel any better. And like I said in yesterday's video, from my understanding, Arsenal aren't going to launch any sort of formal complaint or anything. They just think it's gone now. There's nothing we can do. All the focus just has to be on Manchester City. So Howard Webb may well have contacted him yesterday. I'm sure Arsenal, would have spoken to him and asked for reasons about exactly what happened, but they're not going to make a big public song and dance over it anyway, because they don't want to take anything away from the big game that is coming up on Wednesday night. There's also going to be an emergency meeting that Howard Webb has called for the referees, which I think is going to take place tomorrow, to kind of discuss exactly what's gone on and how it has been allowed to happen. It'd be interesting to be a fly on the wall in that meeting as well, because frankly, I would just love to hear Lee Mason's excuse for exactly how he managed to do or didn't do what he was supposed to do on Saturday, because I just don't understand it. And I read Arseblog this morning, fantastic piece as usual by Andrew, and he said the same thing. There's also an assistant VAR who was sitting next to Lee Mason in the studio reviewing that game. Didn't he say, hold on, you haven't checked to see if this goal is offside? I mean, how can that even happen? It's so mind-blowing that it can happen. I just don't get it. And so it's not just Lee Mason to blame, everyone in that studio. Surely there was someone who said, hold on, we haven't actually checked to see if this was offside or not. And it's just remarkably, again, Andrew's thing in the blog, he said, if you're a pilot, you got your co-pilot next to you, and if you haven't done something, if you haven't put the landing gear down on the way to approach, he's going to say, hold on, you haven't put your landing gear down. It's the same thing. You're sitting next to the guy, you can see he hasn't checked if it's offside, so why aren't you saying anything? How can that happen? So anyway, I'm not going to go into it. Go and read Arseblog's blog this morning. It's fantastic, as always. Okay, so Manchester City, Haaland, I'm sure you saw it yesterday, 3-1. They beat Aston Villa. Villa were awful in that first half. City were all right. I didn't think City were anything special. They just came up against a side who were awful. Haaland went off at half-time. He went over at some point during the first half. He was rubbing his thigh, wasn't happy with something, and he went off at half-time. There's talk now. You see all the articles that are going around on the online desk, the papers saying, Haaland's a massive doubt. I don't see it. When you read what Pep had to say afterwards, he said, at half-time I spoke with the doctors. They said maybe with the score like it was that we don't need to take any risks, and I agreed. If the score was tighter, then maybe I don't do it. I think he is not injured, but on Monday we're going to see. Hopefully he'll be in for Wednesday. If he's not, then there is some risk, then he is not going to play. But you listen to that, it doesn't look like there's anything serious for Haaland. I think it was just a case of he had a bit of a knock. They were 3-0 up, and so you thought, what's the point of risking him when you've got a massive game against Arsenal to come? So I'm fully expecting Erling Haaland to play at the Emirates on Saturday. I'd be very surprised, on Wednesday, I'd be very surprised if he's not. Obviously, it's going to be a big talking point now between now and the game because it's Erling Haaland, but looking at what Pep had to say and looking at the way Haaland was, because he carried on playing after first injuring that thigh, he carried on playing right up to half time, and it didn't look like anything remotely serious to me. So I'd be very surprised if Haaland doesn't make it, but we shall see. That's certainly going to be a talking point as we head up to Wednesday night. Mikel Arteta's press conference ahead of that game is tomorrow. It's a late one, 3:30 p.m. at London Colney tomorrow on Tuesday. Interesting to see what he has to say. Is he going to rein it in when he asked about what happened at the weekend? Is he just going to try and put all the focus purely on City? I suggest it's probably going to be the latter, because he's not going to want to just cause any sort of distractions ahead against that game against Manchester City. So I imagine he will temper down what he's got to say, what he would like to say, and what he actually says publicly. But we shall see, and he'll give all the latest in terms of possible team news and things like that. But it doesn't look like there's anyone significantly injured. Hopefully it will be pretty much a full-strength squad for Mikel to choose from. Elsewhere, another goal for Balogun yesterday over in France. 15 now for the season for Balogun. What an unbelievable season he's having. Really nice finish. Left foot played through, beat his defender for pace. Lovely left foot controlled finish into the far corner. Just another brilliant goal for him. Mikel was speaking about him at his press conference on Friday, and just saying how well he's done, and was really proud of how he's doing, and how he's not overly surprised, maybe surprised by the amount of goals he's scoring, but he knew that he was going to be a good loan spell for him, and pointed to that spell at Middlesbrough, where although he didn't score as many goals, but towards the end of last season at Middlesbrough, he said that was a really important learning curve for him, and he's taken what he learned from that, and that he's really sort of based this season's success on that. So really good to see Balogun continues on 15 goals now, still the top scorer in France. You wonder what he's going to get if he carries on at this rate. He's going to be on for about a 25 goal season, which is remarkable really for such a young player in his first season away from England and a lone club in France. So it's just an absolutely brilliant season, so fair play to him, and long may that continue. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Anything you've agreed with, disagreed with, anything you just want to share, please do let me know in the comments below as per usual. I'll be back tomorrow as we really do start to gear up for that Manchester City game. And remember, Mikel Arteta's press conference at London Colney, 3:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Have a great day, everyone. I'll speak to you soon.